Chapter 183 to 185. I'm the guy who's fucking your mother. Unforeseen words that caused everyone who was drinking their coffee to expel it through their nose. Deadly words that froze the hearts and minds of all who heard them, causing a long and uncomfortable silence. A long and uncomfortable silence that the person most affected by that comment was in charge of breaking. Class, shh. What the hell are you saying, stupid? Bulma yelled as she slapped her boyfriend in this timeline. A slap that almost caused a heart attack to the entire audience. Bulma had just hit the most dangerous guy in the universe. The guy who was so angry a few seconds ago he almost destroyed the world. And he almost destroyed the world upon discovering that a future alternate Bulma had slept with a future alternate Vegeta and they had had a child. Had she become mad? Luckily for everyone, Broly's reaction was much more pathetic than they imagined. But, honey, Broly said, turning to Bulma, making the same face as a child being scolded for something he didn't consider his fault. No honey for now. How you dare to say something so shameful in front of everyone? In front of my parents. In front of my supposed son who I just met. Bulma scolded Broly as if she was a bloodthirsty ogre, well, as if she was Chi-Chi. And Broly obviously tried to justify his excessive statement, but, honey, it's obvious that we've done it many times, we've been dating for years, and... But Bulma wasn't going to negotiate or listen to his explanations. Don't reply me. Wow. Only Bulma would have so much courage to do something like that, Krillin said, representing the whole group upon seeing how she had hit and was scolding the most dangerous guy they have ever met. I see. Even super abominations have their weaknesses, Piccolo thought, somewhat happier. It was the first time he saw the almighty Broly suffer, and that gave him indescribable pleasure and happiness. And some time later, when it seemed like the reprimand to Broly has ended, the expert in receiving and observing scolding, Gohan, asked something quite well-reasoned, Broly-sensei. So you also come from the future? A question that made everyone, even Bulma, look at Broly with inquiring eyes. No, I am not, and I am innocent of all charges. The gods already investigated me years ago and it was shown that I am not a traveler from the future or from the past or from another timeline, said Broly while hugging the annoyed Bulma in the hope that she would forgive him. Eh? What? The gods? Everyone asked with great surprise and alarmism, since they had no idea what he was talking about. Even Bulma, who was trying to stay angry with Broly, had no choice but to change her expression and ask. Yes. It happened when I was still a child, just when I traveled with your sister and Jacko. Some divinities of Universe 6 and 7 couldn't believe that I was so intelligent and powerful. So they thought I was a time traveler or something similar, so they did a hard, long, and sloppy investigation. So after beating them up, showing evidence that I hadn't created a new time ring and using the Dragon Balls from Universe 6 to make sure I wasn't lying, it was deduced that I was innocent, Broly said, explaining one of his fascinating stories, but only half of it and telling only the information that seemed convenient, and lying. Did he beat up the gods? Does that have to seem normal to us? Piccolo thought, who more or less knew what that implied. What is a time ring? Trunks asked, who was unaware of the implications of creating one. A time ring is a device used by the gods to travel between timelines. Every time someone changes the past or the future, a new timeline is created, and with it a new time ring. The gods are very touchy about this topic. They may not have done anything in millennia, but if someone creates one, PUF, they get to work pathetically and blame the first super strong handsome guy with 3 eyes they find. Said Broly, explaining a little the workings of the universe and partially a problem from his past. Wait. Does that mean that in each of those timelines there are others of us? Are there more Brolys like you? Yamcha asked, who began to feel dread when he thought that another Brolys could come to this earth. Not like me. Apparently this timeline was created by the first mad scientific who invented a time machine millions of years ago in another universe. Fleeing from the gods, he ended up in this universe and continued experimenting with other things, such as genetic modification. And it so happened that one of those recessive genetic modifications is me. Proof of that is my third eye. The other Brolys from the other timelines were also powerful mutants, but not as mutants or as powerful as me. And above all, not so smart or successful in life. As they were so strong, King Vegeta banished him to a seedy planet when they were babies because there was a possibility that they would overshadow his dwarf heir, said Broly, explaining another great mystery of his life as he peeked at Vegeta again, this day. Wow, what a coincidence. Ginger said, highlighting the obvious. And that explains why you hate me so much, Vegeta said, which began to connect the dots. Although now I think he will hate you even more from now on, Mutant Rashi said, highlighting the obvious too. Not only him. Yam said with a murderous look, she was still very angry at that hypothetical alternative infidelity. Wait. I haven't done anything and don't intend to. How can you be so irrational? Vegeta protested for obvious reasons. And before the situation got out of control once again with another couple's argument, Bulma, who had studied time in almost all its facets for years, said, wait. But this still doesn't make sense. Let's suppose that everything my boyfriend says, whom I love very much and I'm never going to cheat, it's true, and let's suppose that Trunks belongs to a totally different timeline than this one in the future in which I end up dating Vegeta. Since not even drunk or crazy I'm not going to mate with Vegeta in this timeline, and I don't know what my other self was thinking when she did that. A timeline in which Broly by chance wasn't mutated, therefore he was exiled on a shitty planet and could do a lot of things before the planet Vegeta was destroyed. That's why Ginger and Yam are here and many of the things that have happened are different because of Broly. It doesn't make sense for Trunks to travel back in time to come here, to this timeline. He should have created a new timeline based on his own timeline, where Broly didn't influence our lives so much. It doesn't have much logic. A fairly complete and complicated comment of which, our hero didn't understand anything. I think I haven't understood anything at all, Goku said while touching his head, which had overheated. Dad. I'll explain later, but what Bulma says makes sense, said Gohan, another from the Smart Club consoling his father. Maybe this time machine is not just a time machine. Maybe it allows you to travel between timelines on a specific date and not just create a timeline based on the timeline in which the trip begins, said Dr. Brief, another of the smart people in the group proposing new theories. Thanks father-in-law, if you say so, it makes me less suspicious, Broly thought, liking his in-laws more every day. Well. It's possible, it's the first trip after all, and Mom warned me that time travel is something quite unpredictable, said Trunks, who more or less accepted his grandfather's theory. Broly-san. Didn't you say you knew everything? Why don't you try to find out with your super intelligence what happened? Piccolo asked, who was enjoying this moment like no other. For a simple reason, Piccolo. Because I don't give a fuck about it. Why the heck should I help my stepson from an alternate future? That's the responsibility of his father from the alternate past. I'm not even supposed to be here. I am just an accident that has broken a future relationship and prevented a life from being born. If you'll excuse me, I'll go clean the dishes. I know when to spare, he said as he fled the scene at high speed and excessively melodramatic while pretending to cry from his 3 eyes. A scene that impacted like a Kamehameha on everyone's mind. Especially in Bulma. Broly. Come back. Don't be like that. You don't spare anywhere. Hell. How can you be so strong and smart and at the same time so jealous and childish? Said Bulma, who tried to follow him for a fraction of a second, but decided that it would be better to leave him alone for a few seconds to calm down. And obviously there was silence. No one had expected this reaction from Broly, and they didn't know for sure if they liked that side of him or not. Or what to do or say to resolve that situation. But someone had to break that awkward silence again. This. I think I do know when to spare. Sun-san, when you start to suffer the symptoms of your illness, take these pills. See you in 3 years. My mother won't believe it. Trunks said as he handed the medicine to Goku and fled there just like Broly. And after a few seconds. With the absence of Broly and Trunks, the rest tried to appear normality and began to make plans for the possible future that awaited them in 3 years. So in 3 years. We will have to train hard again, Ten Shinhan said, crossing his arms as he thought about how to improve his daily routine. Yes, this time the enemy is more dangerous than ever. And I don't think we can count on Broly at the moment. If you aren't sure of yourselves and your abilities, you better stay away, Piccolo said as he looked at the Earthlings, who obviously wouldn't be able to contribute anything. Rather they would be a hindrance. Yes, I suppose this time we will have to try harder. Krillin said, who despite being aware of how little he would improve in 3 years didn't want to be left out of the game yet. You are very right, Piccolo. You should stay behind and not get in the way, Vegeta said in an excessively boastful way, mostly to camouflage all the frustration he had stored up earlier today. You know, Vegeta. I can't get completely angry when a Super Saiyan tells me. Oh, wait, you're not a Super Saiyan, Piccolo said, who knew he was much stronger than Vegeta currently and had no problem showing it. And of course not offending Vegeta precisely with his biggest complex today. What have you said? I will be very soon and you will regret it. Vegeta yelled as he faced Piccolo, wanting to break his face somehow. Easy, easy, Goku said while trying to separate his new friends and old ex-enemies. It was at that moment when someone for a change made the most sensible proposal that had ever been made in the entire history of this manga. And that person was obviously Bulma. Hey, know what? I was just thinking. What if we get rid of this Dr. Gero, the one who creates the artificial humans, right now? Obviously that large and efficient solution surprised everyone for more than one reason. And Bulma, seeing that they were paying attention to her, continued to develop her idea. Even if we don't know where he is, we could use the Dragon Balls and ask Shenlong. He'll be sure to tell where he is. If we do that, then we won't have to bother going through all that agony in 3 years. Hey, yeah. That's right, Bulma-san. If we do so, we sure won't have to fight later. Great. Way to go, Bulma-san. Krillin said with great joy, who sensibly supported that idea, which would allow them to easily and safely avoid the apocalyptic prophecy. Unfortunately for everyone, there weren't many like him in the group. If you pull an uncalled for stunt like that, I'll kill you. You got that? Vegeta yelled as he threatened the woman of the most dangerous guy in the universe, the same guy that right now was very angry with him. Oh. Kill her. You wouldn't have been wrong and you actually meant. Fuck her. Yam yelled in a very threatening way to Vegeta. Obviously she hadn't forgotten the Bulma-Vegeta alternative relationship. Please Yam, don't continue with that. Vegeta begged, not wanting to argue about something he hasn't done again. Hey Ginger, has your sister always been so spiteful and irrational? Whispered Mutant Rashi, who didn't fully know this side of her. Yes, always. I once ate her dessert and she hasn't forgotten it for 3 years. Day after day he reminded me. Ginger answered in the most discreet way she could so that Yam wouldn't hear her and remember about the dessert. But I agree with this cheater, it wouldn't be fun. Yam said to Bulma, even though he didn't want to make direct eye contact with her. What do you mean? This isn't a game, you know. The fate of the earth is in the balance. Bulma yelled at Vegeta, outraged by how irresponsible they were being, before turning to Goku for help. The most irresponsible of all, Sun Quan, you agree with me, don't you? Sorry. To be honest, I want to fight them. Besides that, this scientist hasn't even built anything yet. How can we take him out? Goku said, half apologizing to Bulma, since his instincts prevented him from doing something reasonable like ending immediate threats to his life and that of others before they happened. I agree with Goku. If we finish them off now I won't have the chance to show how strong I have become again, said Ginger, as excited as Goku to fight against strong enemies. And obviously that Scion unconsciousness despaired of Bulma, WJTTT? But, the rest of you. We don't have to go along with these Scions. They're just a race of fighting maniacs. I'm going to fight too. I want to see what I'm capable of. If I die, then I'll conk that. That's all I could do, said Ten Shin Han, negatively influenced by the Scions and negatively influencing all the Earthlings, half-Earthlings, and Namekians who for a moment thought rationally. What? Have you become stupid too? I cannot believe it. Bulma shouted again upon realizing how unconscious all her friends were, especially the Earthlings, who were precisely the ones who were most likely to die. And from there another discussion began. And Gohan. Considering that Bulma was scolding her father and her mother was still passed out while her grandfather and Bulma's parents tried to revive her. And because he had an internal conflict due to his half-Scion genetics, decided to distance himself for the moment. I think I'll go see Broly-sensei. So without hardly anyone noticing, Gohan entered the house and searched several rooms in search of his gigantic teacher. Until he finally found him, where he should have gone looking for him in the first place. In the kitchen, cleaning the dishes, as he had announced previously. However, he wasn't cleaning the dishes. Broly was. Broly-sensei. Is it what it looks like, or? Are you projecting a movie onto the kitchen wall using your third eye as a projector while cleaning dishes with telekinesis? Gohan asked, describing what he was seeing. Strangely enough. Broly-sensei. Is it what it looks like, or? Are you projecting a movie onto the kitchen wall using your third eye as a projector while cleaning dishes with telekinesis? Gohan asked, describing what he was seeing. Strangely enough. If you already know the answer, why do you ask the question? I already knew you were coming. You have popcorn next to the microwave, Broly said without moving a millimeter, while he continued projecting the film from his third eye. I didn't know you could do that. In fact, I don't even know why you do it. Gohan said as he ate popcorn, still fascinated by his master's useful and useless powers. Is that the only thing you care about? Obviously I do it because I know you would come. Shut up and watch, said Broly, pointing to the projected film with his third eye, which could be used for everything. After sitting down and grabbing the popcorn package, Gohan watched the movie with Broly. A film where two young men trained in a world in ruins. A training where the oldest trained the youngest with patience, kindness, enthusiasm and severity. But not only in combat, also in other aspects, it was as if that older boy with dark hair was something more than a friend or the trainer of the little boy with lilac hair, no homo. It was as if you were his older brother, his father figure, someone who could be trusted and worthy of imitation. Someone who looked a lot like. That's Trunks when he was younger and... Is that boy, me? Broly, this is what happened in the future of Trunks. Did you create that movie with his memories? You said you wouldn't, Gohan asked, very surprised, confused and somewhat disappointed with his teacher, while looking for answers precisely from his master. I couldn't resist. And yes, this is the future that he experienced, and the future that you too could experience, Broly said as he continued to play the movie, skipping parts that he considered unnecessary. Wow. I'm very big. Will I be like this in a few years? Gohan said, fascinated to see his future self, since like every child he wanted to get older, poor idiots. Like him? I doubt it very much, Broly answered practically automatically. Why? Gohan asked, puzzled and somewhat offended. Because this is a Gohan very different from you. He is a Gohan built through adversity, tenacity, courage, sacrifice and righteousness. The androids killed all the fighters, except for you and Trunks. You were practically left alone in a world in ruins against enemies, monsters that even outnumbered him. And despite that, like a great man, you took the responsibility of saving this world, training with all your being to become stronger despite not having results, facing those monsters thirsty for blood and destruction with all your might day after day despite hating to fight, training, helping and caring for Trunks so that one day he can fight by your side. And also, that in the event that you died in combat, hope wouldn't disappear. Broly said with an almost hypnotic tone of voice to stimulate Gohan's mind. A Gohan who kept watching the movie quite self-conscious while thinking about Broly's harsh words and their meaning. Tell me, Gohan. Is he different from you or not? And why? Broly asked once more. Yes, it is. It is because of everything he has experienced. Those circumstances made him mature, grow and act as he does. However, I am just a spoiled child who hasn't gone through a similar experience. And if we're lucky, I'll never experience it. So I will never be like him, Gohan answered, somewhat discouraged and annoyed with himself. And Broly's answer didn't help him cheer up, rather the opposite. Bingo. I see that you have only neglected your body. Your brain is sharp as always. So, do I have to go through that same hell to become what you expect of me? Gohan said, once again feeling a very heavy load on his shoulders. A load tens of times heavier than the one he felt when Vegeta and company were going to invade the Earth. No, please, what stupid ideas you have, Gohan. Listen carefully, there are 3 types of people in this world. 1. The idiot, who make the same mistake over and over again. 2. The intelligent, who learn from their mistakes. 3. The wise, who learn from the mistakes of others. And now you have a golden opportunity before you. Be wise and smart at the same time. And the job of a good teacher, like me, is to make his student become wise. Seriously, if you become an idiot, you will be the first person I kill in my life. Said Broly as he remembered with disgust the pathetic Gohan from Dragon Ball Super. Eesh. Gohan yelled, retracing his steps when he felt that bizarre killer instinct that his lovely teacher was directing towards him. However, Broly continued with his speech, despite having scared Gohan for almost no reason. Some time ago I helped you understand that there is nothing wrong with fighting for justice. And now I'm trying to make you see for yourself that peace is never lasting and that you always have to be prepared for anything. Always. Or it may be too late when the time comes and the only thing left is frustration and resignation, especially when you know you could have avoided it. While thinking about everything Broly was telling him, Gohan kept watching the movie in which his alternate self from the future faced those 2 androids with blurred faces, no spoilers, and lost over and over again, until Trunks had to confirm his tragic death. It was at that moment that he understood that he needed to evolve again for his own good and that of others. Broly-sensei. Please train me one more time. Gohan said as he bowed regretfully to his sensei, with whom he hadn't come to train for more than a year despite the fact that he had requested it. And despite all expectations, Broly answered. No. A very unexpected and puzzling answer for Gohan, huh? Why? Because you can't pretend that I'm always helping you. You must be a little more self-sufficient like the Gohan of the future and learn to be disciplined with yourself and not thanks to others. But something more intelligent, answered Broly, who practically renounced his responsibilities as a teacher to teach his student the most important lesson of all. You have to strive for yourself and for yourself. Obviously that refusal despaired Gohan, who didn't know which way to go to achieve his goal, but... You've already seen those androids. Not even transforming into Super Saiyan I could do anything. There has to be some way I can make myself stronger, and you sure? Why so serious? In this future you still have your father, if he takes his medication. Don't be fooled by his appearance and general intelligence, your old man is a true genius when it comes to fighting and training. He will come up with something, or rather, he is already thinking of something. In fact, you should be able to get it after what you've seen today, Broly said as he turned off the broadcast and glanced at Gohan. And Gohan, as if it were an epiphany, quickly understood what his master was referring to, while he had a flashback of the battle between Frieza, King Cold, and Broly. You don't mean to that transformation from before? More or less. Aish, you see Gohan. I can't help but be too soft with you. I always end up helping you, even if I try not to do it or not do it too much. I am partly to blame that you are so spoiled, although on this occasion I may have given a poisoned help, and surely some will take the poison even knowing that it was poisoned in the hope of finding the antidote in the poison itself. Ha 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 ha, Broly said, flattering himself as usual, but feeling a bit ashamed for the reason, while feeling Gohan's head as if it were a puppy, as usual. Narcissistic and annoying customs that Gohan had missed so much, especially today. Yes, thanks Broly-sensei, Gohan said as he thanked Broly for his wise advice and left the kitchen. No problem. And don't think about being lazy or you will not be able to enjoy the rewards that will be unlocked when you meet certain requirements. Aish. I'm too good a person. Broly yelled at Gohan, who had already left the kitchen without being able to hear those last words. But there was someone who was behind the door from a few minutes ago, waiting for them to finish talking. Someone who could hear everything. Yes. I already know that you are a very good person. But very silly at some times. What about now? Are you still angry and jealous? Asked Bulma, who entered through the door and with a jump hung on Broly's back, as if she were a koala. No, I'm not. I mean... Yes, I'm still a bit upset, Broly said, trying to pretend that he was still angry, although it was evident that he was trying hard to stay angry. Come on, little bear. You know perfectly well that I would never cheat on you. True. Bulma insisted, climbing up Broly's rocky back to get his face closer to spoke to him. But still Broly tried to be tough. Yes, I know. But that doesn't change the fact that my presence here. That your presence here has changed a lot of things, and one of them is that Trunks won't born. Yes, I know, it's weird to think about this. But honestly, I think the only reason why my other self ended up with Vegeta is only because there was no one better around her. Something quite pathetic, to tell the truth. If you had been in those other timelines today, Trunks wouldn't have appeared, said Bulma, carefully choosing the words she knew would cheer up her scalable boyfriend. Yes, you are absolutely right. Broly said, a little more animated. It was getting harder and harder for him to pretend that he was still angry. Plus, no matter how many children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren or husbands of the future or other timelines come here in a time machine invented by me, I love you and I will love you infinite times. So change that face, give me a big hug and a good kiss, Bulma said as she tried to face Broly as she climbed from his back. But it was unnecessary. Broly grabbed her and did exactly what Bulma asked, I love you too. Sorry if I am sometimes a little jealous or childish. And Bulma, somewhat blushing, said, so you heard me. Hi. Please promise me one thing. Whatever you tell me, honey, Broly said without thinking twice due to the magic of the moment he was living. Promise me you won't be mean to Trunks. Whether I want it or not, he is the son of an alternative myself who has had a very hard life. And Trunks doesn't seem like a bad boy, and he has had a very difficult life without a father to take care of him. Don't torment him with your jokes please, Bulma said, almost predicting her boyfriend's intentions. It was at that moment when Broly for the first time in years accepted a constructive criticism, forgot his jealousy, his fondness for bad jokes, and he tried to be a better person. But not too much. You know what? You're right. The poor son of Vegeta has never had a father, and of course he deserves a much better one than Vegeta, although he is one of the best father in this anime, especially for what he showed in the Buu Saga and Dragon Ball Super. As long as I am in this timeline, I Broly will strive to be the best alternate past stepfather I nth multiverse. I will be so good that he will prefer me to Vegeta. You will see, Broly said, misunderstanding Bulma's intentions and redirecting the bullying he was going to do to Trunks at Vegeta, as usual. Incredible statement that worried Bulma, but she tried to forget about it for her own good and talk about another topic. Well, try not to overdo yourself. By the way, did you hear what those idiots said when I proposed to kill the androids now? Bulma asked, showing the anger, frustration and disappointment she felt towards her group of friends. Of course honey, I've heard it all. And I think you are absolutely right, by killing Gero and destroying his creations we could avoid that apocalyptic conflict and surely thousands of collateral victims, Broly answered his girlfriend, agreeing with her, but this time especially because she was right. Thank God. Finally a scion who is not an idiot. I am so fortunate to have this endangered species in my arms, Bulma said through tears of joy as she hugged Broly and remembered the past events in which the mad scions addicted to fighting had made her despair. I know. Broly said as he comforted her by stroking her head. Unfortunately, I have already promised not to carry out that plan, those idiots were the majority. Nor can we involve you in this plan. Damn. It's so stupid to know who is going to attack you and stand idly by to give them time to do it. What happens if afterwards they can't beat them? Don't they think with their head? Bulma said, grumbling as she returned. She opened the fridge and began to drown her sorrows in homemade alcohol made by Broly. You are absolutely right, but there are other alternatives to your plan that don't necessarily involve killing Gero, and that would still allow those idiots to fight against their creations, aid Broly as he offered him a glass so that she wouldn't drink directly from the bottle. What do you mean? Bulma asked, puzzled as she filled the glass to the brim. It is simple. Change your plan to eliminate the threat before it exists, and focus on creating insurance in case those idiots fail to stop them by force, Broly said with an almost hypnotic tone of voice as he put ice in the glass and a slice of lemon. And that words along with the intoxicating taste of alcohol made Bulma begin to use her head in a more practical way to solve everyday problems, and insurance? You mean? Until she finally understood how to resolve her concerns in a coherent and practical way, oh yes. It is true. How could I not think of that before? We face androids, created by a human. A human who in principle could control them. They must have errors or weaknesses that he created on purpose, weaknesses that I can find and create countermeasures that allow us to defeat them without having to fight when those idiots are tired of fighting them or lost. And as you proposed at the beginning, you could use the Dragon Balls to ask Shinran to give you a magical method so that you can constantly access all of Gero's past and current work and research without him noticing. Since the investigation itself is no stronger than Kami, so it should be possible. In this way you can know everything about our biomechanical enemy. And since you are the smartest woman in the world and we are facing a technological danger, there is no one better than you to control this threat, Broly said while giving his girlfriend a shoulder massage while choosing the right words to positively influence her to do something rational, contrary to what was done in the original version. Appropriate words that made Bulma overly motivated, come out of her small depression and influenced a bit by drunkenness, throw the glass on the ground as if she were an Asgardian. Crash. It is true. Ha 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 ha. Once again the time has come for the great Bulma to solve everything with her privileged mind. Right now I'll go find the Dragon Balls and make my first wish. In addition, there are 2.5 years until the arrival of those androids, so I can still use the Dragon Ball again for whatever I want. Hee 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 hee. And then I'll go to Kami's palace to use the hyperbolic room to finish my other precious project, which will help me better spy on Gero and his creations for a longer time. Hoo hoo hoo. Bulma said full of euphoria as she imagined how idiotic scions would kneel before her 3 years in the future after saving the lives from the hands of the evil androids they were unable to defeat. Well said. That is my woman. Try not to fall, that bottle was 40% alcohol, but due to some seasonings it tastes very sweet, Broly said as he cleaned up the mess that Bulma had created in the lab with telekinesis. Plosh. Are you okay? Broly asked Bulma, who had gotten too drunk, so much that she had fallen to the ground and was unable to keep her balance. Yes. I think I'll do all of that later, could you take me to bed? Bulma said before falling asleep. Desire Realm. In Broly Planet. In Broly City. At the Broly Mansion. In the Broly Movie Theater. Hey Broly, how much of what you have said and interpreted today is a lie? How asked, since he couldn't read the thoughts of others, his curiosity had grown quite. I am also curious. The part in which you said you felt like an imposter that did not belong to that place and that it saddened you was also part of your lie? Asked Acacia, who was also an expert in the art of lying, especially to his family and loved ones. Let's say that 45% lie, 45% truth and 10% ambiguity, Broly replied while trying not to have eye contact with anyone. While Broly tried to cure Bulma's drunkenness and hangover. In the garden, the group of warriors continued arguing, since there were still snacks to eat. But they were almost over. Well then, 3 years from now. May 12th, 10 a.m. at that island. We won't mind if you don't feel you're up to you, Goku said as he sentenced the discussion about the inefficient plan of training for 3 years and then fighting against those monsters. And once again the narcissistic braggart with an inferiority complex had to say his phrase, Kakarot. Just because you can become a Super Saiyan, don't get too full of yourself, although without transforming into Super Saiyan, he already defeated you previously. I'm still going to beat the crap out of you sometime. Don't you forget that I am still the #1 Saiyan. Once again Broly wasn't counted as a fellow Saiyan. And upon hearing those statements. Ha 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 ha. What a ridiculous guy. Ha ha ha. Do he really believe the shit he says? Ha 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 ha. Broly, who was inside the house, laughed so hard that his voice could be heard throughout the city. Ha 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 ha. And that laugh spread a bit among all who heard him. And obviously this didn't like Vegeta, who felt humiliated once again, that day. Shut up. Kakarot, you trained with a gravity X100, I will do it X300. I'm going to get over you. You, my bastard son from the alternate future. And also that doubly mutant monstrosity. It doesn't matter what kind of hellish training I have to undergo for it. Vegeta yelled in fury, swearing to the heavens that one day he would once again be the strongest Saiyan of all, in his imagination. Ah. Yes, surely you will have a hellish training. I guarantee you. Shoni why? Yam said in her hardcore Yandere mode as she cracked the bones in her hands, with clear signs of future domestic violence. Words and attitude that quickly changed the color of Vegeta's face, and with it all the bravado that he had exhibited a few moments ago. In my opinion, there is another Saiyan stronger than you right now, Piccolo thought as he saw the fear in Vegeta's eyes, fear that didn't dissipate even when these two flew together towards the spaceship that Broly sold them in installments and that they had almost paid. Nay-san. Just because you can kill now doesn't mean you should kill Vegeta. Have you heard me? Ginger yelled at her sister and possible corpse brother-in-law, who disappeared into the distance. Mutant Rashi. We didn't know, but Ginger is the less violent of the two, Krillin thought, who didn't know that the serious and trustworthy sister of the violent Sundara was actually a very spiteful ultraviolent Yandere. We're leaving too. See you in 3 years. Bye-bye. We're leaving too. See you in 3 years. Bye-bye. Daijin, Ten Shinhan and Chaos as they took off to train in the mountains as hermits. Chaos, show up really strong now. Ten Shinhan, come up with some new incredible techniques. Krillin and Mutant Rashi said, cheering on their now weak companions. Piccolo-san. Why don't you come train with Gohan and me? I want to spar and stuff, Goku asked Piccolo, the person with whom he was most equaled and who were now good friends who didn't think about killing each other. Sounds good. I was hoping to myself, Piccolo said, happy with his best friend's proposal. It was fine to increase his power little by training his mini-selves, but he also needed real combat to sharpen his instincts and efficiency. But before the three of them could close the deal, the devil, who until now had been passed out upon hearing the keywords, Gohan, and train, woke up in a fury. No. I have had enough. You gotta be kiddin'. Goku-san, how long are you gonna stand in Gohan-chan's way before you're satisfied? He has to study every day to maintain good habits. And now you want to take him training with you to strengthen up. You just butt out. You can just train Piccolo by yourself. And Goku is in. You never do any work, you can't take care of Gohan-chan. Have you ever earned even a penny in all the time we've been married? Chi-Chi said with her usual anti-martial arts speech despite being a martial artist who had never been seen going to school, nor working either. The weakness of all Saiyans is their woman. And why do they all have such character? Piccolo thought, reaching quite coherent conclusions. And Gohan this time, remembering the words of Broly, his future self and the need he felt to change for the better, before this discussion generated around him generated more couple problems, he consciously had eggs for the first time in his life and confronted his mother, Mom. I'm going to train with Dad and Piccolo. It doesn't matter what you say. Obviously this act of disobedience or adolescent rebellion didn't please Chi-Chi, who shouted, Gohan, what are you? However, Gohan wisely interrupted his mother's row. He interrupted her precisely with a speech that he had prepared in his head for some time in anticipation of this inevitable discussion that he knew would happen. A speech in which Gohan tried to replicate Broly-sensei's constant success. Mom, please. Stop obsessing over me and my studies so much. I don't need you to force me to study to be a great scientist. I want to become a great scientist and I think I have shown at all times that I strive and deserve to be, in fact I can already be considered one. Train few hours every day will not deviate me from that path. I'm not Dad. Have I not shown you until now that I am committed to that goal? Haven't you seen how much I work without needing you to tell me anything? Don't you trust me? Gohan said with puppy eyes while giving coherent and somewhat manipulative arguments to make his technique more effective. Speech with many nuances that obviously caught Chi-Chi off guard, and she didn't know how to react, Gohan-chan. Of course he trusted you. It is just that. But Gohan knew that right now his enemy was weak and disoriented, he couldn't let him get up and start gaining ground in this dialectical combat, he had to keep attacking. Yes, I know. You care about me and want the best for me. But Mom, it is impossible for you to always know at all times what's the best for me. In the end, this is something that I have to decide, not you, not Dad, nor Broly-sensei. I know that you all want the best for me in your own way, but in the end I have to be the one who values what is best for me and what path to take and be responsible for my own decisions. And now I think the best thing for me, to grow up and stop being a spoiled child, is this. To become the man that this planet needs, the man that I need to be. A great scientist like Bulma, a great warrior like Papa, and someone who helps others in need, as you have always done with me, Mom. Please give me this opportunity. And luckily for Gohan, that dialectical attack was very effective on Chi-Chi, who began to cry, reflect on how incredibly psychotic and oppressive she had been. So in a way she tried to explain why she had behaved this way with Gohan. MFFF. Okay, you're right. I can't always be on top of you, you're already a little man. But promise me that you will not become a trainaholic who only lives to fight like your father. And also promise me that you will study diligently to be a respectable man that will work in the future to support your family. Yes, Mom, I promise you. I promise that I will be responsible, hardworking, studious and also strong. Gohan said as he hugged his mother and savored his first and final victory over the entity with the greatest authority over his life, which would finally let him live with some more freedom. I don't know why I feel a bit attacked, Goku said while trying to understand the indirect message in Chi-Chi and Gohan's words. He didn't get it, but his instincts told him that they were saying something about him, and not good. However, Piccolo understood perfectly. I think it's becoming clear why Chi-Chi doesn't want Gohan to train or fight. Goku, you leave a lot to be desired in certain aspects, so much that you've created a trauma. Besides, that little imp. He has learned the same manipulation techniques that Broly uses, Piccolo said and thought, explaining to his friend that the reason why Chi-Chi was so strict with Gohan was to educate him in order not to resemble him in certain aspects. Well, leaving that aside. Goku-san, Piccolo-san, Gohan-san, do you mind if I join you to train? There are 3 of you, you will need someone else so that none of them sit idly by, Ginger said, trying to argue why it would be beneficial for them if she helped them train. When in fact it was she who wanted to join them. Hi. Seriously? I thought you would go to train with Vegeta and Yam, Goku said, somewhat surprised by that sudden request from a person with whom he hadn't had much contact. And I thought you would train with us, honey. Mutant Rashi said with great sadness and disappointment, especially since he had bought a new training suit for Ginger. Not even crazy would I train with those 2 right now. Didn't you see how crazy she was about Vegeta's alternate infidelity? If I trained with the 2 of them, I would end up being the collateral victim of their couple spats. And we would still be odd. That is why I have proposed to train with you, don't get the wrong ideas. Ginger said to Goku and company in a somewhat sundera way, to then address Mutant Rashi in a somewhat more affectionate, and somewhat condescending way, and on the other hand. I'm sorry, Rashi-chan. But without the intention of offending, you and Krillin are, how to say, very weak. I don't think I can improve on anything by being with you. But don't worry, after training I'll go home. Well, okay. I will feel lonely without you, Mutant Rashi said, while both he and Krillin felt quite offended and demoralized by the sad and harsh truth. They had become very weak compared to the current scale of power. One more time. No problem for us. It will be very useful to have someone else. And you, Krillin, Yamcha and Rashi-sama? Goku asked his childhood friends, who at some point were as strong or stronger than him. No thanks. I think it has already become very clear that we will be a drag. Krillin replied, while he became depressed upon recognizing the truth for the umpteenth time that day. Okay then. Bye-bye, Goku said as the whole family, Piccolo and Ginger left Bulma's house. And seconds later Yamcha, Mutant Rashi, Krillin, Puar, and Oolong did the same, returning once again to their painful lives of characters that were previously relevant, but no longer are. In this way they all began to do their homework for the tough exam that would await them in almost 3 years. Yam and Vegeta began their infernal training consisting of exercising and fighting in impossible gravitational and atmospheric conditions, especially infernal for Vegeta, who was attacked by Yam with a disproportionate fury due to the Trunks incident, being defeated many times. And due to those beatings the post-traumatic stress of having been overcome by Broly, Goku, Trunks, and even Yam on his way to the Saiyan, Naruto reference, became more noticeable, but that only served as extra motivation to become stronger for the stubborn Vegeta. Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, and Ginger continued to train regularly to increase their powers. Gohan and Ginger became sparring partners, both with the aim of improving their kung fu and reaching the acclaimed Super Saiyan state, which were exchanged from time to time to fight against Goku and Piccolo and take private lessons with them. And on the other hand, Piccolo and Goku trained hard with each other at the same time they focused on their particular goals. Piccolo to leave training his minions to absorb them later, despite the fact that this ability was giving him less and less immediate results, since his body had become accustomed to it, so the minions must be stronger in every absorption and consumed in longer intervals to take effect. Goku tried to further polish his technique and ability in his normal form, improve and get used to his Saiyan form, and according to what he had seen with Broly, try to overcome the limit of the Super Saiyan. Ten Shinhan, Chaos, Mutant Rashi, Krillin went to ask Mr. Popo for help so that he could train them again. Who knows, maybe they could improve with some divine luck. Yamcha, well, he kept playing baseball, we have to admit that at least he worked. Bulma at the end of the barbecue found the Dragon Balls on her own and made her wish. Shinran gave him a magic crystal sphere similar to the one used by the ancient Kaioshin, with which she could observe any place in the universe in real time. However, Bulma's was more powerful, as she could inspect the present and the past of whoever she wanted and wherever she wanted. With this new utensil Bulma used half of her bodies to collect all of Gero's research and began to assimilate it as if it were her knowledge at an alarming speed, while the rest of the bodies prepared to finish their other long-awaited project. As for Broly. Desire Realm. In Broly Planet. In Broly City. At the Broly Mansion. In the Broly Movie Theater. Broly, is this serious? Kamagawa asked upon see the development of this phase of history. Yes, why? Broly asked, not understanding why Kamagawa was upset. It is not obvious. If Bulma manages to create countermeasures against C-17 and C-18 as she did previously with the detonators, but with a radius that encompasses the whole world, the saga is over. Even without that, there are now 2 additional Saiyans. If they become Super Saiyans, they could turn the tables in a certain way during battle. You have shown them the secret of getting through the Super Saiyan transformation, so the androids may no longer pose a problem even if they don't reach Super Saiyan 2. With the method you have shown Piccolo, he is now almost as strong as a Super Saiyan. If he combines with Kami, he will surely be stronger than a Super Saiyan 2. It is likely that Goku now doesn't have serious heart problems, since his wife will force him to take his medication weeks before the appointed date. Not to mention Gohan, who if he manages to achieve the Super Saiyan transformation together with his true Saiyan transformation, he will gain a multiplier of 500. Be that as it may, most likely Cell will not be completed. And in the event that it is completed, it will not matter. Gohan will be able to defeat him more easily than before, and not only Gohan. What's more, if they destroy Gero and the fat android before Gear activates C-17 and C-18, which is likely if Yam and Ginger become Super Saiyan in the first confrontation, the saga will end even earlier. Not to mention that you are going to help them, as you always do. Kamagawa said, making a good summary of the possible scenarios. Come on, and that's my fault. Okay, yeah, it's all my fault, I know. But you can't blame me. As for Bulma, I have only influenced her to do what was the most logical and obvious. Hell, the only reason she didn't do it in the original work was because otherwise Akira Toriyama would run out of fights. Goku's heart disease will be something important but not decisive. The very idiot always lets his enemies get stronger, and I keep betting on his irresponsibility and his fear and disgust for the modern medicine. Yam and Ginger's intervention will not be overly decisive in a battle against C-17 and C-18. Being normal Super Saions, they will remain at a disadvantage against those infinite energy androids, especially if C-16 joins the team. The secret of overcoming the Super Saiyan. I doubt that any of them could be able to reach that state except for Goku, and what's more, maybe thanks to me he has or could misinterpret the correct direction of the Super Saiyan evolution. Piccolo, yes. I have to admit that he will become too strong, but it is not my fault. I wanted to see that bug in action as soon as possible. And as for Gohan, he will have certain difficulties in transforming into a Super Saiyan, difficulties that I also had. Broly answered every point. Madara said, who expected to see spectacular matches that were very close, like the ones he had with Hashirama before he got all the power-ups. Either way, this will hardly be exciting. Said Madara, who was expecting to see spectacular even matches, like the ones he had with Hashirama before he got all the Deus Ex Machina power-ups of his fiction, Inner Pokemon, Red Eyes, Onion Eyes, and All U Cells. Come on. Are you not interested in seeing how this saga would have developed if the protagonists were not mentally retarded? Well, not quite. You can never underestimate the chronic stupidity of this group of idiots. Despite having everything in favor, they will complicate everything unnecessarily. Anyway, enough spoilers for today. I am not going to intervene. I will be absent unless something gets out of control, such as the destruction of the world or something like this, Broly said, trying to cheer up his viewers, who wanted excitement and action, and some others more romanticism, food, and he didn't know why, but some wanted 1 or 2 harems. Let me guess. You are going to tell a big lie to excuse your absence, right? Asked Aizen, who was an expert in this strategy. Yep, obviously. In fact, I've been holding this lie for many years. There are few that are credible. It is a shame to spend it now since there is the possibility of having the obligation to help someone in a move of weeding. Anyway, these will be 3 quite relaxing years. Broly said as he pressed the skip scene button from his remote control. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.